tuned into Breaking the Mask of Depression with your host, Diva with Depression.
Hey guys, thank you for joining me on Breaking the Mask of Depression with me, your host, the Diva with Depression. How's it going today? I know, crazy world. We still got a crazy world. I think we got crazy weather going on somewhere. I think there's a hurricane or a windstorm, and the world is still crazy. I mean, every day is something else. I hope you guys had a good Easter if you celebrate. If not, I hope you had a good time with your family. God bless the Popey. We lost the Popey. He was a good Popey. So I hope that he rests peacefully, and I hope that he dispatches all the big dogs when he gets up there, because we need some help down here. So you guys know that April is Autism Awareness Month, and I'm an autism auntie. I have my nephew, and he's going to be 30 this month. So you guys wish him a happy birthday. And you know that my sister, she usually comes on and she gives us some advice because she's an expert in the autism field. So today I have someone coming on, and he's going to give us some insight into a different autism disorder that I had to research and get some insight on. And it's going to be interesting to hear from someone that is living with it, tell us their testimony from the inside. But you know me and my Google Facts, so buckle up. So the disorder that we're going to talk about today is Asperger's syndrome, which I found out that they don't call it that anymore as of, I think it's 2020 or 2013. So now it's called ASD, which is Autism Spectrum Disorder. And so they stopped 2020. So what I learned was 2.85% of the population, of the Black population, lives with ASD. And the number, of course, as everything, is higher than the white population, because, we got it like that all the time. And ASD is more common in males, and the ratio is 4-1. And of course, when it comes to Black males, we always get stuck. Of course, we get everything. So my guest is a genius in all areas, so I'm not even going to try to read off everything. I know him as the head of the Black Podcasters Association and a fellow New Yorker. So welcome, Corey Gumbs.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much for doing this. I know that you, like me, an introvert, so when it comes to getting in front of the world, it could be scary.
Yeah, I chose the wrong space.
And I just think it's so funny. I tell everybody all the time that we are public speakers, but we're introverts. But
There's a lot of people in the podcast space.
In the entertainment industry as a whole, as a matter of fact, today is the anniversary of my Purple Love, his passing, and he was an introvert, and I think it's
talking about Prince.
Yeah.
Well, we have the same birthday.
Oh,
interesting.
That's my heart. Okay, so not to be cliche, but tell us a couple of things that you are into, your jobs.
So, this is the introvert part, right? Talking about yourself. Despite all, I always got to give a reminder about people about my accolades, quote unquote, that I've achieved.
I don't want the accolades. Just, the Black Podcasters Association is a big thing to me.
I wear many hats, and that's part.
You do.
We're going to talk about that probably in this conversation, but I'm the founder of the Black Podcasters Association. We started right before the pandemic hit New York. Actually, we started the same month as a Facebook group that turned into now a paid community, online community, and becoming an institution in the industry, which was the goal when I started. Outside of that, I'm a web developer. I have a background in music, my first love. As young as try to do the rap thing. Worked, wanted to work in the studio, wanted to be an engineer, producer. I still do music, as a hobby. I'm actually going to be rolling out my first instrumental album this year. So
okay.
Finally got to a point in my life where I'm comfortable. It's just like I'm just going to do it. father of three wonderful children. What else? I sit on the board of Air Media, which was something I never thought about ever doing, but it's been a great and wonderful journey. Sometimes I still be like, "Oh, what am I doing here?" But, and recently was asked to be a sitting judge at the Signal Awards.
Oh,
So,
that's awesome.
and I've also done judging for Podcasting Awards. So,
That's awesome.
um, sometimes when you're in this space, you forget like the things you've done. But one of the best things I like doing is like helping out members and just helping the industry move forward.
Awesome, awesome. It's funny listening to you list these things, but as I was researching and writing down things and thinking about you in relation to the research, the creativity thing just kept popping up. And I think about you with the podcasting and the music and the art and just different things like that. And one of the things that stands out in all of these, I hate to call them disorders because they're not disorders, they're just differences to me, is the artistic part of it. And I know, like my nephew, he's fascinated with Legos. He loves Legos. And so every holiday, birthday, Christmas, whatever, he asks for these Lego sets. And some of them can be like $600. And she'll go out and she'll buy this $600 Lego set and he puts it together in an hour. Like these intricate things or whatever. But that he's fascinated with them and art and everything. And the creative thing just keeps popping up in everything. So I thought about you as I was researching it because you just the music. I love your music choices, but that's the creative side of it. So I love that part.
Yeah. Well, for me, the music it comes from both sides of my family. So I was like Bane says in Batman, I was molded by it. I was born in it. So I guess I just like I don't know why I've always gravitated towards it. So my father was a jazz player. Um,
Oh,
he, back in the '70s, he played with Nate Adderley Jr. And a couple other people's albums.
okay.
Where he even wrote his own music.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome. Oh, wow.
sorry, I think my allergies are acting up, so I
Okay.
apologize to you and your audience.
Everywhere.
Um, my grandfather was played in a Puerto Rican Philharmonic orchestra.
Oh, wow.
My grandmother, one thing I learned when I was younger, when I used to go to Puerto Rico and visit my dad, I would be like, he was playing jazz clubs and stuff out there. So I'm always around jazz players and musicians and all these different people. And the one thing a lot of people kept telling me was how much they loved my grandmother because she was a teacher at the Puerto Rican Music Conservatory in San Juan. So she, a lot of them she taught.
Oh, wow.
She was held in very high regard. I'm sorry. Like, of course, all day long I'm fine, and then all of a sudden I get on a microphone and everything starts acting up. That's podcasting, y'all. Just make you know, it's Murphy Law be happening. But so and then my grandmother, we had, I grew up in a house with a piano, so I used to always spend hours on it. And my grandmother used to encourage it. She would just sit there and like I would just play. And
Hmm.
one of the things that always got me in trouble is I played by ear.
Oh, wow. See,
I'm not
that's
going to
all.
say I have perfect pitch or perfect tone, but
Hmm.
give me a few minutes and I'll figure it out.
Wow.
So, so I never practiced, and it used to get me in trouble when I played trumpet in junior high school. And my teacher used to tell me, like, you might have been able to play first trumpet if you had actually put the time in.
Yeah.
Which I didn't see the point. And
Because you know what you're doing.
you give me, if I'm really into it, I'm going to learn it. And then, so
Yeah.
reading music sometimes is a little difficult. And one of my things in life has always been like, maybe I should pay. I'm probably going to spend some time on YouTube and get my music theory up, but part of it is it has to be of interest, and I've tried to force myself, and it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And,
that's my music background.
yeah.
Um, I won't say I have a talent in art, but I used to try to draw some things. I was good at some things and bad at others. My
Hmm.
oldest son is naturally talented
Okay.
in art, and one day
Hmm.
I just saw a picture and I was like, "Oh, where did you trace this from?" And no, he drew it from freehand. So I was like, "So he's an artist now.
Hmm.
He's gonna be 26, so he's an artist. He's working
Wow.
for that. He likes comics and anime and all that stuff.
Oh,
So
see, that's a good
it
field.
runs in the family, like the artistic side. We've had
That's
yeah, my grandmother's side, my maternal side, we've had like musicians and stuff. My both my grandmother, and my aunt, Chris, they played the piano. They did a lot of that stuff. So
that's cool. I always say also too, you can't be a New Yorker without being into music. Like,
I mean, I grew up in hip hop,
yeah,
so
it's
and
just
funny was
in
like
you.
when I was a little kid, my grandfather, he was old school, like that's that jailhouse stuff. So he was really
Yeah.
strict on it. But I'd be secretly breakdancing or sneaking, and my older cousin would introduce me to some stuff when he would come visit.
Yeah, yeah,
So, and it became became a love of mine.
yeah, yeah. So you recently this is how we got this story started because you recently and you can tell me dates when I finish. You recently said that you were diagnosed with ASD, Asperger's, and you're an adult, and so
I'm
you
an adult.
and so when you said that, and that's what caught my attention, is because you're an adult, and usually when you get those type of diagnoses, and not saying that it's unheard of that you get it when you're an adult, but usually you get it maybe when you're younger, when you're running around tearing shit up in preschool or elementary school, or your teens, just like ADHD and different things like that. Um, so what made you, was it by accident, or did you, say, oh, well, let me go, something's going on, let me go find out? What made you, what happened?
So one, the signs were always there. So when you mentioned Legos, I was like, when I was a kid, I used to love my Legos. As I got one reason why I don't do Legos is because the ones I want to do cost $600. I want my Death Star. I want my, I want to build some of these things. Um, and I enjoy doing it. So I wasn't one of those kids that was tearing things up. I stayed to myself. So it was like, oh, he's shy. I also learned when I got my diagnosis, talking to my mother about it. I could talk, but I would. They thought I was nonverbal
Me too.
up until I was about. She said until like 2, 3 years old.
I was 6.
So there was that. The signs were always there, but what made me do it? I mean, you growing up through life, you always struggle. You struggle with these things. Like, there was times where I just felt out. I never felt like had a place. I was always this weird, quirky kid. I was trying to do things that fit in. But I actually worked in the developmental disability space in the psych space for about 12 years.
Hmm.
So as I started, one of the first things people said is that you're not going to last long doing that. 12 years later, wound up running a group home as a manager, just doing a lot of those things. um, which people don't understand. It's a very technical space, right? You have the
Yeah.
DSM, you have these things that you do to assess people. So it's very technical. So of course I gravitated toward that because my makeup is I like technical stuff.
Right.
I like systems, I like steps. So working in that space kind of introduced me to the, to certain things. And I got really good at it, and I think I got really good at it because I could relate. So I knew how to communicate. I knew how to do things. Plus the very regimented technical side, I did really well with following protocols and stuff and assessments and stuff. And I also challenged a lot because that's part of my makeup too. As you know, I could be a little. I don't know if I try to figure out if that's just the New York side of growing up in the '80s and '90s, and or if it's if it's also a personality thing. But I would challenge things, and there would be times where like talking right now, thinking back, pattern recognition for me was really a big thing,
Hmm.
and I would be like screaming at the top of my lungs, like, "This is what this. I'm here. We're seeing these behaviors, da 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 da," and I'll keep going. And they're like, "Well, it's this." So I had one young lady. She was misdiagnosed for like 2 years, and I'm screaming like, "No, I'm telling you, she's doing it on purpose." Da 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 da. Here's her behaviors, and it took her psychiatrist to come to the house to see. And after that, she was there for like 10 minutes and was like, "I was wrong this whole time." Right? It was a lot of other nuanced parts,
Hmm.
with the mom and and all that stuff, but that was always my thing.
Right.
Um, left I got fired from that job because of some nonsense, but I still stayed in the space. Then I went and worked in a group home with teenagers that were transitioning from the hospital into a more supported living format because their families no longer wanted to deal with them, whatever the situation was. A lot of times the families just didn't want them back, so they were
Right.
transitioning from being in the hospital to a group home to help them get their own apartment and get themselves supported. That was a hard job because you see what some of these kids go through, what they're struggling with. sometimes the families aren't the best people. And you can see why they're the way they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the thing that used to get me in trouble with when I worked in development disability space, because I could see where a lot of the behaviors and stuff came from when it came from the parents. Um, and I was a huge advocate for like parents with mental health, with my friends and people I know. Like, you gotta deal with your stuff, right? You gotta go deal with your guilt and all this
Yeah.
that, so that you can give your kid the best quality of life, because you're doing more harm than good. Um, but I left that space because ASD, once the passion is not there, or once the interest is not there, I move on. And
Yeah.
I got into the real estate game, and back right before the crash. So I was like, oh, let me, I want to get, then I got caught up in the crash. So I left that to go try my hand to be a real estate agent, because I wanted to get back into real estate because I really enjoyed it. And that didn't pan out because I'm not a salesperson. I'm too my high sense of see. I can tell these stories now because I understand better. But back then, I didn't understand. I had my high sense of justice was too high for me to do a job like that. And
Right.
sometimes I would talk myself out of money because I would be like, I can't rent this to you. Like, I would go see an apartment and like, I can't do this. Like,
Yeah.
you
Can't do
have
that.
kids, and I wouldn't let my kids live in this situation.
Right.
So and I was a little aggressive too when people try to play with my money. So so that became a situation. But long story short, I went and took a part-time job working with a young man that was transitioning. He was in the senior year of high school. So I was helping him with like his ADLs and getting him prepared for when he graduates high school. And that was actually my first time working with somebody that's specifically had autism.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good learning experience. I enjoyed it, but me and him, he was like my little. He started to become like my little brothers kind of thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
but we had a lot of similarities, and we had a lot of things. We were into the same thing, so it was kind of like two friends that get into something, and then So I was like, all right, I'm learning more about this autism thing. A lot of stuff sounds like some of the stuff I do, and I knew I wanted to get tested just to be just. I like to take things off the plate. So like, okay, are you a sociopath? Because I've been accused of that. Are you this? Are you that? I'm not gonna say I have trauma and I have a lot of stuff that I'm dealing with now on top of that, because the one thing I will say, I'm 47 years old, going to be 48 in June. And when I told my mom about it, she was apologetic, and she was like, "We didn't know back then what we know now." And I was like, and I told her, I said, I know, I'm not blaming you for that, because I worked in this space. I know, like, a lot of what we learned over the past 30, 35 years, it's a lot now, right?
Right.
And because the money and the attention's on it, it's good. Like anything medical,
Right.
it gets more attention. Um, but I started to pursue it, and then I didn't. And I think maybe down the road, once I clear up some of these things on my plate, all these many things that I do, I think I might get into the advocacy part, because the struggle I had was getting diagnosis.
Listen.
One, they don't take insurance. They don't take Medicaid or anything like that. They don't even take most private insurances, and you have to
Yeah.
pay out of pocket. And when I was doing research, not last year, the year before, going into last year, 2023 into 2024, I was looking for doctors, and it was like 5 doctors who did the test in New York City,
Yep. Yep.
and the cheapest one was $5,000.
Yep.
And in my mind, I was like, if I have $5,000, like, and this is ignorant on my side, because it wasn't, but it was like, if I have $5,000 to just dump on doing this, I would put it into my kids, or I put it into my business. So,
Yep.
and which is interesting on the whole ASD portion, because of that challenge, you're finding therapists and stuff trying in the group. That's why trying to figure out how ways to get people the support they need without having to go through those things. And so when I went into therapy last year, um, I knew something was wrong with me when me and one of my ex girlfriends broke up a couple years ago. Um, and there was this is where the sociopath accusations used to come from. And
That was one of my questions, so this is good. Go ahead.
so, um, we were things were falling apart, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the messed up part was we were like friends from like kids. So she was like one of my best friends, and things were just falling apart. And I remember one night we were sitting in the car, and this was the first time I openly admitted it to anybody, because a lot of times you just play the game, you mask, you play the game,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what's going on with you just think you're
Right.
nuts. And she's pouring her heart out, about things that I was doing and how it was affecting her. And I was sitting there and I just was like, I couldn't I couldn't relate. It wasn't I had no emotion about it. And I remember turning to her and was like, something is wrong with me because I know I'm supposed to feel this way, but it's not resonating with me. It's not helping me. And because I mean, to this day, I still care and love for her, but we went through a lot of that things over, since 15 years old. But long story short with that, I just knew, and it wasn't me telling her that because I was trying to be hurtful. I was sitting there. I remember I was looking out the window, looking at the stars, which is one of my things too, right? So like, somebody's telling me, and I'm like, oh, look, there goes Mars. And, and I'm getting caught up looking at the constellations and stuff. And I'm trying my best not to pull out my phone because I have an app that helps me look at the stars and stuff. And she's pouring her heart out. And I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me because
Right.
I'm not feeling what I should be feeling in this moment for you.
Right.
And that's when I knew I had to go get checked out. And that relationship, and a couple years later I got into another one, and there was issues where I just dumped on my ex-girlfriend because she was saying like I was like clothed, you like I'm masking. I'm not trying to let people into with my world because you're gonna run.
Right.
And
Right.
and then when we had a conversation, and I remember she just told me something. I saw her face, and I was like, okay, there's a problem here. And I just like kind of just dumped all my trauma, thinking, and now I know why that happened too because of context.
Right.
I thought I was giving her context about why I wasn't responding to her the way she wanted me to, or why she felt like she couldn't help me. But but from the outside looking in, it was like all this stuff just got dumped out, and
Right.
I didn't not, and I was doing it, and I'm watching her. I'm literally watching her face, and I'm not picking up the cue. And then eventually, at some point, I was just like, "Oh shoot, I messed up." And I was like, "I just dumped on you," and she was like, "Yeah," and that just kind of like messed up some things between us for a while. So that was like when I was like, all right, there's something going on. I got to pursue it. And that's when I went to therapy to just go deal with I thought I was just going to deal with my trauma.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about that stuff, and I was telling her like, all these things, and she gave me a test. And I literally reading the test, I'm laughing to myself. Because one of the things, and I remember I screenshotted one of the questions and I sent it to she was still my girlfriend at the time. I sent it to her, and we were laughing about it because it was like, do you hear things that nobody else hears? I would be at her house and be like, did you hear that? Or I'd be outside, be like, "Did you hear that?" And she'd be like, "No." And I'm like, "You didn't hear that? Like, like that sound." Or I would get up and go check the room or something like that. And she'd be like, "What's wrong?" I said, "I heard something. I wanted to go double check it." Um, so it was a running joke. But as I was taking that test, I was like, "Wow, yep, yes, yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes," or whatever the question was. But it was like, "Yes, yes, yes." And
Yeah.
that's when it came back that I was I don't know, I don't even know what to call it anymore because it's like higher functioning, but
It
they
says,
high
yeah, high
support.
functioning
Everybody
autism.
has all these different terms, but
Yeah.
it came back that I was I was like I had a Asperger's or ASD.
Yeah.
And so for the past year, about a year now, I've been working with my therapist on that stuff, but it's been a tough journey.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff. So I know I took the long road because context.
No, but because I have all my screenshots here. Well, not screenshots, but that's what it's called. That's what they said, that one of the terms is high functioning autism,
Yeah.
or autistic disorder. Um, and that was one of my questions. How did the symptoms affect your relationships?
Oh,
Um,
it's terrible. It ruins
be-
all my friendships, family, everything.
because it's
Oh,
and I'm thinking of different, me and my television shows, but I don't know if you watch Chicago PD, Chicago Med,
I
but
barely watch TV.
oh, okay, but the one of the girls on there, I think that I don't know if she's autistic or what, but she has no social cues and she's very detached, and that's her. She's very standoffish and just very cold, but she's a genius. Like and I already know that that's something. Um, but that's how you don't have the social cues, and you could be very standoffish. But that does not mean that you don't care, that you're not a loving person or whatever.
Or
And you just
empathetic. Actually, I'm learning because I used to think I was empathetic because I have a serious for me the struggle is the gray area.
yeah,
So a lot of and that was always an argument I would have with people. Corey, everything's not black and white, and I'm like, yes, it is.
yeah,
And then I would do my logic loops, and technically it isn't. It's it is not. There is no gray area. It's a place you choose to sit in that I
Yeah.
tell people. But that was that thing got me. That gets me into a lot of issues relationship wise too. Is my logic loop, like just how I do things, because it seems like I'm cold. It seems like I'm empathetic. Because for me, 2 + 2 = 4. There's no need for all the for the fluff, right? It's
Right.
if you pick up a gun and shoot somebody, there's a consequence, and the high sense of justice kicks in, and it's like, well, oh well, and that's where I get into a lot of trouble with people. So I'm not a big fan. Like I was never a big fan of how TV and everything portrays mental health, because I was knee deep in it. But the like now I get a little triggered by the autism stuff, because I'm like, it's a very specific, like a movie came out a couple months ago about it, and I was just like, that's not. Yeah, there are kids that are like that, but that's not. It's not fair to present it that way, especially for Black kids, because it presents
Yeah.
itself different ways. Like, for instance, for me, the behaviors didn't start until I was a teenager,
Right.
and there's a lot of reasons for that. Growing up as a Black teenager, no real father figures. There were men around, but they were a bunch of punks.
Right.
They weren't really good figures. My father wasn't there. The one person who did died when I was 13, my grandfather. So I didn't have any structure. I was already struggling with connecting with people. And so I thought, you just go down, and then being a victim of like crime and everything, I turned to that.
Right.
I started hanging out, with my street friends and getting into that stuff. So, but I was never like them. So it was just an interesting experience with that. But it portrays itself in so many different ways, because that's why it's called a spectrum, because it's not, everybody's not the same. And
Right.
unfortunately in media everybody tends to think that, which is something I struggle with now, because I think people forget, because I'm high functioning, quote unquote, that it triggers me, and it's a struggle for me now, to the point where I've really like kind of went back, like I stay to myself now, which a lot of you guys in the BPA don't realize. But like I like having conversations with friends has been a real, and family has been a real difficult thing, because it's like, one, like my best friend, when I told him, he was like, "Don't weaponize it." Like, bro, like I called you to tell you like all the stuff we went through, and that's your response. Another friend of mine who has neurodivergence, he was diagnosed with ADHD, and he was also the reason why I went and did it, because when he got diagnosed with ADHD, and we used to always crack jokes about it, because like, oh, um, ADHD, when he got his official diagnosis, he said the first time I'm taking the test, he said the only person I could think about was you. He was like, everything I was reading was Corey. And that's why I was like, and we had a good relationship. So he was like,
Mm-hmm.
Corey, you need to go get tested. So that's when I was like, okay, I'm gonna go check out this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was also like the encouragement. But me and him got into it one time, because I'm telling him I'm struggling with things, and he's like, well, you just need to do this, and I'm like, bro, it doesn't work like that for me. You telling me to get a notebook, you telling me to write things down. I'm like, the problem is I have to remember to do that, period.
Exactly.
Well, you got to make an effort. And I'm like, you don't know, you don't understand. Is when I'm in my thing, it's like when I was a kid, when I was doing music, my room was in the basement. I moved myself down to the basement because I didn't want to be around people. But two, I had my music set up there, and I would be making beats. And the worst thing you could do was interrupt me, because I was in such a flow. I would always get into these flows, and then once I got disrupted,
You
I
can't
couldn't
do
go
that.
back to it, and it would piss
Yeah.
me off, because I'm like, yo, like you hear me, you see me, and you hear me doing this thing. Why are you disturbing me? I'm busy,
Right. Right.
right? And that would be a problem with girlfriends. Be like, oh, I want to spend time with you, but the whole time I want to make music. And they would
Yeah.
be like, oh, I'm gonna come over, and then they want to hug them, and I would get mad, be like, leave me alone. Like, why are you touching me? Don't touch me, like, and it would cause problems. So, like looking back, I can explain it, and I did my apology tour. I would call as many people as I could and be like, yo,
Oh,
for that incident, I want to
yeah.
give you some insight on why that happened between us. And
Yeah.
I shouldn't call it apology tour, but it was more like trying to bring things together. So
No. Yeah.
the frustration part is that I find myself trying to educate the people, but it's not always reciprocated, and that can cause conflict, because now you're triggering me, because I'm telling you like, yo, bro, like I don't understand, and you're taking it as an insult, or you because you think you hold me, you have this one vision of me where, and then I'm telling you that like that was a mask, like that was not me being who I true, that was me, that was my survival mechanism. I wore a mask for 30 years.
I'm going to tell you a secret. Well, it's not a secret because you can listen to any episode. It's not worth it. It's not the apology tour, the explanations. It's not worth it because people are going to only hear what they want to hear. Like you said, your mom was.
Come on, Didi. You see how I move. So, I'm going, if I got something to say, I'm going to say it.
No, you're going to say it. But I'm saying, like, when you said that you think that you want to switch, move into the advocacy portion of it, however you choose to speak through your advocacy, that's how they'll hear how you feel. That's how they hear your explanation. But don't talk, because they're gonna hear what they want to hear. They're gonna say what they want to say. I have been called a liar. I've been called a whiny baby. I have heard the weaponized thing. The things that, listen, there are family members that don't talk to me anymore. There are friends that have fell off, because I don't talk on the telephone. Like, there are just so many things, and these are people that have known me for 40 years, 50 years.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's, same thing. Like, these are
you
people
know,
since I was 12 years old.
like, what can I do? Your mom apologizing, okay, thank you, mom, but at least your mom apologized. My mom,
Well,
whatever.
now I kind of understand also where her apology comes from, but I want to touch on
Right.
something. My high sense of justice. I don't accept that. I won't
I
accept
know.
because
know.
if you say you love me and you care about me and you are my friend, just like I give you the grace and I'll try to support you, even though I'm like, Didi, whether I agree or not, I give people. I'm a collaborative person. I give people support. I know what if, and I always tell people I know what it's like to be on that side.
Yep.
So I tried, and I mean, when I never started what I started, that was the main driving force for me starting what I started with the BPA, was
Right.
because I was like, we need a space that's a true space where you feel supported and all that
Yep.
stuff. And I may not always agree. I mean, I may not even understand, but if it's important to you, and I want to see you win at it, I'm going to support you. And if I'm your friend, I want to see you win no matter what. Or if I care, if I care about you, and that was always my thing. It was like, I may not give you what you want here, but if and I would tell people, I would tell like my girlfriends, I would tell them if I'm doing X, Y, and Z, that's me showing you I care. When I stop doing it, means I don't care.
Right.
I'm not going to sit here and compliment you all day long because my response would be like, "Are you 5 years old?" Because that's what little children need. You're an adult.
Right.
You should, and I know we want validation, but the logic, like I said, there's no gray area, so it always seems like it's very brutal and direct. But for me, it's so. But to my mom's apology, I'm sorry. I'm gonna go back to that. Part of the apology was when I was 6. I remember doing it. Now I remember, but I've forgotten about it. Court ordered. I was wilding out. My family's always calling the cops on me because things would get violent sometimes. But for me, the violence was I can't take it anymore.
Okay.
Like and I have a very high threshold for accepting people's BS because I know I can go to that point.
Right.
So and it's something I work on to this day. Like there's times when I get aggravated, I'm just like I'm about to put my hands on this. Like when my best friend said what he said to me about weaponizing, I got off the phone with him because I told him, I said straight up, bro. I was like, if we was in person, I'd have knocked you out. And I was like, and he knows that, we've had fights. He knows I know how he moves. He knows how I move. We would have been duking it out in the street.
Right.
So I was like, I just hung up on him. So, but for me, my mom said, she was like, I gotta find it because she moved. She sold her house last year, so she moved. So all her stuff was still all over the place. So she mails me a report. This was a report that was done by a psychotherapist, somebody, psychoanalyst, when I was 15 or 16 years old. And I'm reading the report because like I said, I don't remember everything. I remember doing it, but I also remember being like a teenager, like I'm not doing this, right? Thinking I was sabotaging it. But I'm reading the report, and his outcomes that what he suggested was, which was interesting because he suggested I be put in special ed, not because of the intellectual portion, but because of the social portion.
Yeah.
Everything he put on there, basically from 16 up until recently, I was like, that's been my life. So that was a hard time. That was like a hard 2 weeks for me when I got that. That happened. That happened around September of last year. So when I, kind of like when I was being silent, I was going through stuff. That's what I was dealing with. And I remember, I was upset. I was pissed off because I was like, you're gonna go through this. You're gonna go through the what ifs, right? It's like, what if 10% of this was actually done?
Wow.
Where would I be at right now? And I've always had the attitude of like all the bad things I've been through, all the things, all the mistakes I've made. I was like, I wouldn't be here where I'm at right now and be the person I am right now if I didn't go through those trials and tribulations. But at the end of the day, I had to suffer.
That's right. That's right.
And I was
Mhm.
like, and I want to, and I'm like, I want to be like everybody else. Like, why am I going through this? Why do I feel this way? Why can't I keep a girlfriend?
Right.
Why do my friends not want to be around me? Why did
Right.
I blow up the way I just did?
Right.
Right. You know, and that hurt me. And I had to come to reconciliation and work through that too, because it was like, and I don't blame my mom for it, because I'm like, I always put it into context. 30 years ago, 40, almost 40 years ago, like, we ain't know. But then you also have to deal with the you also have to deal with the taboo of it, and your, cultural taboos of it. Not
Yep.
saying that my family was teachers. My mom had a background in childhood, child development, so she was aware of certain things.
Right.
But she was also a mom, and she was dealing with a kid that was wilding out. So like, so I don't blame her for it, but there is a part of me that's like, I wish you had just taken some of the advice.
Yeah.
Because this
Yeah.
thing about me, she doesn't know that I went through, or stuff that happened to me that she doesn't know. And I don't really talk about it to my family or my friends about it.
Yeah. And
So
that's hard too when you have this new diagnosis now, and you have to reconcile that with past your past history, and then you also have to reconcile with some of the trauma that you went through also.
yeah.
And that's something that I haven't dealt with either. Like I had the trauma that I have not discussed, and I have to, put it all to. It's just a lot. So um, if you go quiet, I understand that part. That's a lot, and the fact
Yeah.
that, like you said, your mom doesn't know, your friends don't know, because trauma triggers shame in some situations. There's shame to even being diagnosed with something that you have to, come to terms with. Shame with trauma, shame with it's a lot. So you have to
Yeah.
give yourself some grace with all of this that you have to put together.
I mean, yeah,
Um,
it wreaks havoc. I mean, some of my friends know certain things because,
yeah,
and if part of the reason why it's like that for me, and it's still like that, and it's still, it's because people throw stuff back in your face. It's like those kind of moments where you kind of open up to somebody and they diminish how
exactly.
you're feeling, or they diminish, or they use it, they weaponize it.
They weaponize it. Yep.
And when you do something wrong, then everything comes out, and it's like, bro, like, I trusted you, like, and so it plus, plus also I didn't know what was going on with me, so I kept people at arm's distance too,
Right.
because I didn't know what was happening. So like, I have so many different relationships with friends. Some friends I like, they know a lot about me, and I think part of this has been me like being open about it because people need to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but the other thing too is I get tired of talking about it. I just had that conversation with somebody this week, and I was like, "Listen, man, like we had a long talk, but I was like, I can't talk about. I'm tired of talking about it." And I was like, "If you ever have any questions or you want to talk to me about it, that's fine, but I can't keep talking about it." And like this past month, like, so I found out I have ADHD and autism. I had the or whatever the AUDHD diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
And I was dealing with the ADHD because ever since I got this last year was really complicated for me because everything came to a head. I got the diagnosis a couple weeks later. I wasn't processing it right. I thought I was. I wasn't dealing with it right. Um, go to Atlanta for a client, go for my birthday, get drunk, every acted a complete ass, um, ruined my relationship. I didn't do anything to her, but she saw a side of me. And honestly, I knew when I went to sleep that night, when I woke up that morning, I was like, yo, you was wilding out, bro. Like, and I didn't understand why that happened. I knew I was like really drunk. But she was like, you don't remember everything, half the things you were saying. I was like, no, I don't. Which is, but I was like, I knew I OD'd, right? And that ended our relationship. So I was dealing with that, and then I was dealing with the diagnosis, and then I was dealing with like trying to understand what happened, and then just doing the business stuff, and
Hmm.
I couldn't focus. That's kind of why things at the BPA kind of slowed down too, because I couldn't focus
Right.
And it was such a struggle. It still is. Like I was just like I would sit down, I would try to read a book. I would try to do the thing and I would open a book and I would just close it.
Yeah.
The only thing I could do was my music because that's where a lot of my emotion goes into. So like that's how I was coping with it. And then I had to put on the mask because like had to speak at a conference and I still had to do the things I had to do with business. I still had to keep that going. But as I started learning more about my diagnosis and the symptoms of it, because it's funny, you work in this space, you could recognize it, but then you don't recognize it in yourself.
Right.
So I started listening to this book about this. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I'll get that for you. But that helped because it was just teaching you how to cope with your autism. And I started learning a lot like that. For a brief moment, my ex girlfriend came back into the picture because she saw some of my posts and she reached out to me, and that was our reconciliation moment because a lot of things that over the years that we went through and differences, and because she's very headstrong, I'm very headstrong, so we was always bumping heads. Um, she helped me find out some things about myself too because she started going down a rabbit hole with me and looking up stuff and was sending me things and she was very supportive, but again, things, we just had too many conflicts between us and
Hmm.
that just fizzled out. Um, but it was a hard time, and I learned that culmination of my birthday. So what I learned was that one of the big things for me is autistic burnout, um,
Oh, okay.
which is you just you just over too much sensory over things, and everything comes to rises and then it comes crashing down.
Right.
Which made sense over the years because I would do that a lot. I would get people like, "Oh, why are you so flustered?" And just be like, but internally, I'm like, it's just too much happening right now. My brain felt like it was shutting down. And
Right.
when my oldest was born, that was the first time I probably realized it, which was my ex girlfriend, my son's mother. She was having his heart rate started dropping. So the doctor comes in, they're like looking at it, like, "All right, we'll be right back." And she's in her state, so I got to be the one that's got to be the stable person. And they just come reeling all this stuff in. It was like a whirlwind, and they got her doing all these things. And she's like, "What's happening?" And then, of course, nobody's telling us anything because they don't want anybody panicking. And I remember I was just like, I'm listening to the doctors. I'm trying to calm her down. I'm hearing the beats. I'm hearing all this stuff. I'm hearing everything. And I remember like just my brain shut down. I almost fainted. And I had to pull myself together because I was like, if you faint right now, you're just gonna make things worse. And
Right.
I stumbled and then I just like pulled everything together. But I didn't recognize that was my overstimulation, how it was
Right.
for me. Because I usually consider myself calm on the fire because I've been the calm on the fire. I'm usually the person that doesn't run. I'm usually
Right.
runs to the fight, not flight.
Right.
Um, and over the years, it'd be like I would it's just situations or like something would happen, and I would just people were like, why are you acting like that? And I'm like, not recognized. I just know I'm highly stressed. My brain is on like everything's going
Yeah.
crazy, and I'm sitting here like, why is nobody else acting like this, right? And but that weekend for me, like when I look back about it, and I talked to my ex girlfriend about it, when we finally reconnected and talked about it, I realized I was like, holy crap! Like Thursday, it was like Thursday. My birthday was on a Friday. Thursday, we went out on a boat ride out here in New York City for one of my favorite bands. My son joined me, so I was happy about that. And that was a stressful. It was a long night and it was stressful when we were leaving because the crowd, like all these things bothered me. But I just ignored it. But long story short, Thursday we did that. A couple hours when we got home, we slept for like 2 hours and had to catch a flight to Atlanta. So we get in Atlanta. I haven't been in Atlanta since '97, so I'm kind of like who, and a lot of my friends, and a lot of BPA members out there. But that
Okay.
Friday, everybody was gonna come celebrate my birthday at a spot. So it was just nonstop. And then the next
Yeah.
day, my clients that brought me out there for their podcast, I was helping them produce their podcast, and they were doing like their lunch party. I was dealing with that, and then it's like, okay, well, we got the rest of the night. I didn't want to go back to the hotel. I was ready to party. It was on my birthday weekend, and then we go hang out and party, and then I'm drinking, which I think the bartender kind of was making my drinks a little too. I remember I was like, she told me how drunk I was, and I was like, I only had like 3 drinks.
Right.
I hold my liquor, so I was like, I only had like 3 drinks. I was like, why was I so drunk? And then
You
everything,
were the birthday boy.
and I didn't realize I was crashing and burning the whole time because it
Yeah.
was just nonstop, constantly going boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And I used to pride myself on that. I could go. I've coded for like 3 days straight. And that's the hyper focus. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
But looking back and like after I started learning about masking and artistic burn, I was like, yo, that was that night because I was so happy because this was like one of the best birthdays ever for me, right? Because usually birthdays are like terrible times for me.
Right.
Um, I guess I was so ecstatic that I lost control, and then I realized all the years of like autism burnout happened in that moment. And when I say I crashed and burned, I crashed
Right.
and burned.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
burned epically, and that's how
Yeah.
I do things. I do things epically. I want like my mentality. If I'm gonna lose, I'm gonna lose. I'm gonna lose bad. So and that's what happened. And
Yeah.
and I was very apologetic to her. But I had to learn. I had to learn what it looked like for me, and it's still a struggle. Like a couple weeks ago, I sent a bunch of text messages out to people. Like I felt it coming this time. Like usually it's like I'm in it, and I'm like I gotta shut down. This time I felt it coming, and I was like, I'm gonna be. Don't reach out to me. I'll reach out to you. It's gonna be a couple of days. You're not gonna hear from me. I'm all right. I have to go deal with this. And
Very good.
for a lot of people, they weren't used to that.
Very good.
And some people took it personal. And I'm like, bro, like it was that or me put hands on somebody. Like, because I don't know how to deal like that's why I was into sports, because that's how I dealt with my aggression. Um,
But
but
that's good. That's good.
I know I
I'll give
hijacked
you
the
an
conversation.
example.
I'm sorry,
No,
but
but that like when I came to the Afros and Audios, I didn't go to the party that Saturday night because after the whole day, and when I got back to the hotel, I I met my cousin, and I was like, I don't know if I can do it. And she said, well, then you just can't do it. She was like, listen, she said, you're here. You know what I'm saying? She's like, the whole world is shocked that you even came. She said, if you can't do it, then don't do it. And I was like, I don't think I can do it. I don't
and
think
that's
I
the
can
hard
do it.
part, right? Is being able to recognize and say and be okay
Right.
with it,
And
right?
I've never been, I mean, like I'm the person, I'm gonna suffer and I'm gonna go. If I tell somebody I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go. But I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. It was just so overwhelming. The whole day was overwhelming already.
There
And
was a
then
lot. There was a lot going on.
and it was my first time like meeting people and stuff like that. And I was like, I just couldn't. But you have to get to this space where it's like, people will just have to understand,
Well, if it
you
makes you
know?
feel better, see, that
Huh.
was you. When you saw how I was there, the whole time I'm dying inside.
But you have to
No,
get
I
to the
was no, I
point.
was no. When I'm telling you, I'm like, I'm not saying that figuratively. The whole time I'm trying. I'm. Like I said, I was going through a lot, and it was like I'm here. I can't. And maybe that's the man thing. I don't know. That means sometimes the toxic masculinity thing is like, but for me, it was like I'm here I'm here as the founder of Black Podcast Association, and every year we have a bunch of members, and I'm trying to support Talib with what he's doing. And it's like the job has to get done no matter how you feel. The job has to get done, and I think people don't understand that's the complicated part with these things too. It's like, it's like you got to fight yourself. But that whole time, I was still in grief over my relationship ending. I was still dealing with the diagnosis. I was still dealing with me trying. I was dealing with my identity issue because that happened a couple weeks before I woke up one morning and I was like, who the hell am I? Like I realized I was like, I've been masking for 35 years since I was 13 years old, or that I
Yeah.
can remember. And I was like, because at 13, when my grandfather died, was like a pivotal point for me. And there's trauma behind that. But that's when I started cutting class. That's when I started acting up. Um, and that was the last time that was the last time I actually got robbed for my bus pass. So like that's when I got on some like hood stuff, right? And I was like, I'm not gonna be, you're not gonna do that to me anymore. Um, but I was dealing with all of that stuff,
Yeah.
and mostly I would have never even known. Some people knew, a couple people knew. Probably one or two people knew,
Yeah.
but
You
most
have to start surrounding yourself with one or two people. They're not even one or two people. I have three close friends. I lost my sister a couple of years ago, so that would have been four that know everything. So if they know if they say good morning, how are you doing, and I'm like I'm feeling like shit, but I'll be okay. And they know that there's not going to be a conversation today. I'm
yeah,
okay. I'm stinking. The monster's acting up. Like they know all the code words,
right,
and then they're not offended if I don't want to talk to them. They're not offended if I don't want, like I'm in Florida now. So like my sisters that are here, they know that if I don't feel like getting out of bed, I'm not going to get out of bed. They don't get upset. Just let me know if you want to go get coffee, or let me know if you need me to come over. But you just have to surround yourself with people that love you in spite of, that are not gonna throw it back in your face, that are not gonna shit on you because you can't talk to them for a couple of days. And there are people out there. And you have to get people in your personal life and your professional life. So like if you would have told me when we were at Afros and Audio that that was where you were at, like if I'm your professional, you know, in your professional circle, that I'm gonna run interference, you know, for people, because you have to
Yeah.
do that. You know, you have to surround yourself with people like that in your professional and your personal life, because if you don't, then you're gonna crash and burn in every pocket of your life, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not be ashamed of it, like not be afraid to do it, because there's millions of us out there, and we have to run these businesses, and we have to run these
You have to live. You have to
platforms,
survive.
you know. And so like how are we going to do it? We have to support each other, and that's the only way to do it. We have to help each other, and we have to help each other get through it.
You know, and so I I agree with you, and it's hard, right? Because it is a very
It's extremely hard.
it's a level of vulnerability that you don't
It
even know.
is.
It's hard to even tell who you can do that with, because especially, you know, growing up how I did, like, you know, I've had best friends do some really devious stuff to me. I've had
You and
friends
me both.
like, you know, I have friends right now I don't talk to at all. It's on site type of situations. Like,
Exactly.
and these are people who I like, these are guys that we was in the trenches together growing up. And you
Exactly.
know, and I've overextended myself because I was being a friend. Even though they were dead wrong in certain situations, I still showed up and was supporting them, helping them with their kids, or, you know, stuff like that,
Exactly.
without asking, without hesitation. So it is hard because it's like you have this level of trust with people, and then, you know, but the crazy part is like almost perfect strangers. And I've had that conversation with friends, like, you don't know these people, da, 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 and I've been here, and I'm like, this is some real manipulative, abusive shit. Excuse me, but, you know, and I'm like, but then I have somebody that I'm in the BPA that's texting me every day because they know what I'm going through, just making sure I'm all right. And they're like, yo, if you need to talk, and they're being extremely genuine. So your circle, I remember when I was reading Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I learned this when I was doing real estate, that once you get to certain levels, people don't come with you. And it's not that you're being a bad friend and your friendship is not there. I'm very literal. So when I did, I really believed, like, I read that and I was like, okay, that's true. Like, you know, it's like, of course, it's, you know, looking back, it's more nuanced, but I really adhered to that. I was like, these are my friends. We grew up together, whatever we've been through, whatever we've been through. But if they're not coming with me, I have to leave them. And that's
My
the hard
favorite
part because,
line is Wale. I lost a lot of friends, but they ain't even dead.
yeah,
That's what we got to do.
but my problem was in up until recently, you know, thanks to therapy, I've had to address it. But I have a serious, like, I'm extremely loyal
I'm the ultimate
to a
empath. Me and my
fault,
girlfriend talk about this all the time. It's
where I
disgusting.
accept things I shouldn't accept.
Yeah.
And I still haven't examined where, but I know what part of autism is. That part is like, you know, because of the disconnect and stuff. So when you have people, when you kind of hyper focus on them. It's not hyper focus, but, you know, I used to always say I grew up in the wrong era. Like, I love Japan, the Japanese. I was like always into the samurai, Japanese cinema, all that stuff, because of like their honor system. It's something that always, from when I was a kid, it always
Yeah.
resonated with me. Um,
Because it was like that.
because it's very clear. It's clear.
Yeah.
These are rules.
Yeah.
It's how you social. You know. So, and I always told people, if I ever go there, I'm probably never coming home, because
Yeah.
it seems like an environment that, you know. I mean, I've never been there, so I'm just talking out the side of my face. But from what I know of the culture, it's direct,
Yeah.
but it's not. You know, one thing about their language is direct, but it's not direct. I'm learning that. But so I don't know if I'll be able to do well there. But the social structure is very systematic, and they have rules and all that stuff. So it's like, you know when you know when you're being dishonorable, you know when you're doing so. It would always resonate with me, and that's how it always was. That's how I'm with my friends. I'm working on it now. I'm not. I have to fight against it sometimes. Um, and it's not that I can't advocate for myself. It's just I don't. The process and how I do it is skewed. But that's also a thing. Like, there's so many things I've learned and I'm noticing and I understand I'm tributing. Like, I have what they call PDA. Now, don't I always forget the name, like how to say it, but it's basically, you tell me if I'm like, if you, like, I automatically put you've seen this. You tell me something, I push back. So Corey's stubborn, Corey's arrogant, Corey's this, and or Corey doesn't listen. And it's like, no. And that was something I struggled with too, because it's like, I'd always have to go back and apologize, right? Because I'm like, I didn't listen and I should have listened. But it was just something like, you can't tell me, don't tell me what to do. I don't do well with ultimatums because in my mind, I'm going to, and I see this is how I used to process it. Give me an ultimatum, I'm going to prove you right. Like don't, and I always took that as a form of disrespect, not knowing that this was a thing. Like I never understood why I was like that, but it was just like, oh, I can't do that. Hold my beer. My mom be like, be home by 12 a.m. I'm coming home 2 o'clock in the morning, and then we get into a fight, we get into an argument. Girlfriend tells me I can't do something. Okay,
You gonna do
hold
it?
my beer. You know, like who are you to tell me? And now I understand. It's like and I understand what it is because it's instantaneous. Corey, do nope. Who he, like? Don't tell him. And it's weird that I was able to manage people and like I look back at certain things. I'm like, how did I even get to this point when I like when? But I also knew back then. But there's a place for it too, though.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
you're in a leadership position, because like talking about the Afro's order, when you're in a leadership, sometimes it's not about you. I knew that this moment was for the members. This moment was for you guys coming to this event and getting the best experience. No matter what I had to do, the job had to get done. Right? You got to
Right.
purchase stuff. You know, I'd be in my hotel room crying. I keep it real.
Yeah.
And you didn't come. I don't think you said you didn't come to the party. I
Mm-mm.
left, and I was drinking hard too. I was drinking before I get there, but I was drinking more like I'm gonna have a good time, and which probably wasn't a good thing because I wound up hooking up with one of my best friends. She lived in Annapolis, so she came to Baltimore, and we went out for dinner, and that was a weird, that's where I was able to let everything out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I had to leave because I had to go. We don't see each other like that. So when I'm ever in town, like we're always trying to figure out how to see each other. Because we might go a couple of years without seeing each other, so it's like catching up. But the other part was she knew what was going on with me, and I had to talk to somebody. So
Right.
it's like those kind of things. But it's hard being in this position I'm in because I have to. Sometimes you gotta. It's not that you have to not pay attention to your mental health or take it important, but there's things that have to get done that's beyond you.
It
I
is.
think that's complicated, and I think, and it's I think part of the problem what I'm learning too, being a high functioning autistic person with autism. Sorry, because that's another thing how people identify themselves. Um, is I think on that space, and there's a comedian she had. I loved her bit because it's like you're saying I'm high support, but I'm like I need support. And I
Yeah.
think people look at it that you can do all these things for yourself and that you do it, and it's like, but you're struggling. I love Rick and Morty. There's an episode in Rick and Morty where he put himself in his teenage body. The whole episode, he's screaming, I'm in pain. I need help. Somebody help me!" And everybody's just thinking he's cool. And I always related with that episode. I never understood why I related with it, but that's my life. It's like the whole time I'm dying, I'm screaming for help, and I'm doing very self destructive stuff. I'm getting drunk and starting fights, and and I'm walking in front of moving, driving car. I'm doing like really crazy stuff. You know,
Nobody's
um,
paying attention.
that's what I did in Atlanta because my friend told me when I told him what happened, he was like, Corey, everybody carries guns out here, right? And I was talking shit.
Wow.
So, I mean, and you gotta be, you gotta but even now I'll be like, so like I've been shot at before. Like, like but it's ignorant, but part of it is like, but the defiance part, and it was always a problem. It's like that always caused problems with people. Like, why are you like this? Why you just can't, and I'm like, no. But now it's more like I try to warn people about it, and I also tell people like I'm exhausted from all of this. It's been a year, almost going on a year now. May will be make it a year from when I got my end of May, make it a year from when I got my diagnosis, and it's been a year since I've been in therapy. But I'm exhausted because it's nonstop. It's a constant, you constantly, and then you got to be aware of it,
Yeah.
which means you got to fight against the urges. So, like today, for instance, I've been on medication for the past month because like what I learned in just in medical, I try to do least invasive to most invasive. So the doctor was like, let's start with this off-brand medication before we get to the stimulants like Adderall and all that stuff. Cool, because that everything has its issues. So she had me on a Wellbutrin, and I think I felt more the side effects than I felt it actually working for my ADHD because they do it to help me focus. But today we had the conversation and she's taking me off of it. And it's like I gotta figure out, you gotta deal with these now I gotta find this because I was telehealth, I gotta find a psychiatrist that I gotta physically go to to get the prescribed stimulant to help me focus. But now I got to start all over again. Got to do another intake. I got to do this, and it's exhausting because you
Oh,
got all these other
listen.
things you got to do, and on top of it, you can't focus on it. And I will say this. I think with the Wellbutrin, it did calm me out a little bit, and I think in doing so, because I've been sleeping a lot, and I was telling my friend, I was like, I think because I've been on 1,000 for so long, my brain, medication helped my brain slow down a little bit. That my body's now catching up because it's like I don't sleep,
Yeah,
and
me neither.
for me
Yeah,
it's a process. I'll go months without, like, I'll sleep for like 2 3 hours, 4 hours the most. If I could get 5 hours, it's a miracle, right? Because my brain doesn't shut off.
right.
Then I got to do something that I think will help me, like watch a movie. So I watched Star Wars for like 2 weeks straight because Star Wars in 5 minutes will put me to sleep. But then there'll be that week where Star Wars keeps me up, and then I watch all of them. And next, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I got to go to work, or I got to
Yeah.
go do this, or and establish a cycle. But the autism burnout is when I crash and burn into that, and then I have to sleep for 2 days, 2 3 days, right? I'm just like,
Yeah.
done. So it's like all these things. You got to be aware of those things. Then you got to do this thing, and then on top of it, if it's something, the autism side is the hyper focusing on things you want to do, and it's like, I don't want to do this,
Yeah.
and I have to do it, and then it becomes procrastination because you start the process. How many times I've gone online and started the intake at a place, and I just let it sit there I keep the tab open as a reminder, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do that later today, and then I get caught up in something I'm doing, or I make a beat, or I do this, and then it's tomorrow, right? So you got to manage all these different things and still manage your own survival.
Y'all think that I'm like y'all when I'm talking to you guys in the BPA about how I
Oh,
can't
I
focus or
understand.
I can't grasp, like I'm dead serious, Corey. Like there's if you saw my system, my brother finally had to force me to download a password app because I have like little stick it stapled together all over the place, and then I have a notebook with stuff, and it's I have 15 different apps for, and he's like, sis, you have, and I'm like, you don't understand. He's like, I do understand, but sis, really,
Yeah.
it's a mess. I
Like my
understand.
mom, oh my God, don't come in my room. Like my one time, my mom like came in my room and was picking up stuff, and I don't have photographic. I'm probably is a semi photographic, but there's a method to my chaos, right? Like you see my background, it's all beautiful and stuff, but if you saw everything around here, my desk, everything is a complete mess, right? I got a whiteboard that I brought, spent all this money on to practice writing things down. I set everything up, and I haven't touched it since I brought it. And I beat myself up over that kind of stuff because I'm like, this is supposed to help make you better, but I see it's sitting here. You know what? I'm learning about myself this too because I noticed I do this with groceries. I forgot what it is, what it's called, but it's almost like out of sight, out of mind. So like I'll order groceries and be like, oh, I need mayo, or I need this, and I'll open my thing and it'll be like three things of
Yeah,
mayo, and
yeah.
I'm like, damn it, like I should have wrote that down, but
That's the ADHD part.
yes,
Yeah.
and I did that this weekend. I was like, oh, and then I'm like, I thought I ordered this, but then I'm like, I'm like, they didn't deliver it, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even order it, but I remember clicking it, like, but I was like, I don't remember unclicking it, and
Yep.
I probably did that. So it's like all these different things. So I understand completely, but and that's the problem, and that's what conflict can get triggered because everybody I try to be more empathetic about it because I'm like, this is coming from hopefully this is coming from a place of love where you hear me going through this chaos and you're trying to offer help me, right? And I'm like, I can't do that. And it's not, and it's like, well, you keep saying you can and you don't want to. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. Like if I don't put on, like, I'm people like I just getting to use my calendar is starting to become a habit. So for me, it has to become a habit,
Yeah.
right? So one thing I always tell people, send me a calendar invite. If I don't do it right then and there, I've double booked.
Yeah.
I've done that, or I forgot a point. Somebody will text me like, "Hey, I'm on the call," and I'm like, "Shoot, I'm on the bus." Like, all right, we just gotta do it on the bus now, right? Because of course I play it off, but I'm like, damn, I really forgot. I was talking to a member over the weekend, and I told her I was gonna connect her with some people. Literally 10 minutes after we got off the phone, I was like, who the hell did I say I was gonna connect her with? And then of course, like 4 o'clock in the morning, it hits you like a lightning bolt. So and people don't understand, you know, people don't understand the effects it has on you on a long term scale. Like it
Yeah.
might seem like I'm okay. Like you hear me joke around all the time. People say like, "Oh, Corey," I said I just make it look easy. I said I don't know what I'm doing.
It's
I'm
hard. Yeah.
struggling. I just make it look easy.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's hard to sometimes for myself looking at other people and not trying to understand why. Like I'm telling you, I'm suffering. I'm telling you, I'm exhausted. I'm telling you, I'm struggling to maintain. I'm very vocal about it. Like people like, how you doing? I'm like, I'm exhausted, and they think I'm talking about being from sleep, and I'm like, no, from everything.
From life.
You know, there was a time last year where I was mad I woke up. And it wasn't that I wanted to hurt myself. It wasn't coming from a place of suicidal ideation or anything. It was just like, I am tired. Why is it like, why do I want this stop? Because it was like constant. It was just like one thing after another, boom, boom, boom. And I remember I used to tell my therapist, I said, I said, if I could just get one day of a break, I'll be fine.
Right. Yep.
People are like, oh, why don't you go to like, why don't you take a vacation? I'm like, because it's not a vacation for me. Because Corey loves history. Corey loves things. Like I remember when I was a group home manager, we took the guys on vacation to Disney World. I had the itinerary every day. We had itinerary from when we wake up in the morning to when we go to bed at night, right? And I had to give because the staff were there. I had to give them their opportunity to go and enjoy themselves. So I had all of that structured out. And I remember they used to be like, it'd be like, all right, we have a breakfast reservation at 8. We got to catch this. We got to catch this trolley to get there. Blah 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 blah. Because we were staying at different park. We were going. We were doing every park every day.
Mm-hmm.
And we would spend the day, do lunch, dinner, breakfast, all that stuff there. So I'm like, we got to take about 30 minutes to get there. You know, trolley. We got to get everybody together. You guys have to be up by 7 o'clock in the morning. And I'm literally knocking on everybody's door, like, are y'all ready to go? And when the staff wasn't prepared, of course, I would lose because the autism side was the plan is not going. I would lose my stuff. And the running joke would be like, now my staff love me and I love my staff, but you know, business is business. And they would be like, they started calling me drill sergeant. And they were like, Corey, like everything, like this is vacation. Let everybody. And I'm like, we are enjoying it. This is what they wanted. They wanted to come to Disney World. We're going to make sure we get the maximum, as much money as we spent on this trip. We're going to get the maximum thing. It's always, like I said, there's no middle ground for me. It's always this or this. It's always from
Right.
one side to the
Right.
other side. So like, and like I always tell you, the signs were there.
Right.
And
Right.
and that was always a big thing, especially when you're in a relationship with a woman. I'm not being sexist or anything, but I'd be like, I'm gonna be at your house by not. All right, we got to be here by 10 o'clock for our reservation or wherever we're going. I already did the traffic report. I already knew I have 3 routes already figured out. You know, like I know New York City streets like the back of my hand. I mean, that's why I did so well when I drove Uber because that's why I was making a lot of money when I drove Uber because I knew the routes. I knew how long it was going to take. Oh, you got to get to JFK. We're in Midtown Manhattan. The bridge. Okay, we're going to go through the tunnel. 25 minutes. Like I literally have all that stuff mapped out. And I make a contingency for. I remember I got off the highway. Guy got mad at me, and I was like, "Bro, you said you need to get there by this time. We're in bumper to bumper traffic. We're not gonna move. I know the back streets. I'll get you there." And I literally got him there like 15 minutes before the time he was supposed to get there. So, and you know, and he gave me a good nice tip for it. But long story short, like that was also an issue, like the scheduling. So for me, it's like it's all over the place. So the ADHD stuff kicks in, and then the autism kicks in, and it's always like I look at the memes and stuff that people, you know, make videos people make joking around about it, but I'm like, bro, like that's true. But when you don't know about it and you don't know what it is,
Yeah,
it's
you don't know
like, what is wrong with me? Why one day I'm like on point with everything and everything, and then the next day I'm just like
a hot mess.
king procrastinator. Like I just don't have and then you're internally beating yourself up over it because you don't have it, and everybody's looking at you, and it's like I don't know. You know, and I hope people listening to this understand and then the experience is different for everybody.
It
And
is.
we as
It is.
humans tend to generalize based off of what we see, especially when we don't know something. I mean, look at the
Yeah.
political climate we're in, right? People have a very singular view about things, and they're not willing to accept or move. And but you got to understand that somebody has ADHD doesn't mean they're going to be bouncing off the walls. That person might want to sleep all day long. You know,
Yeah.
like everybody has different things.
Yeah.
For me, my autism presents in my music, my taste in movies. If it's not of interest to me, I don't. And I always crack jokes with my ex-wife. She used to always be like, "We watch everything you want to watch. When we gonna watch something I want to watch?" And I made the mistake of watching. I was giving her The Notebook. I should have never done that to myself. It was torture. It was torture. It didn't make sense. And she's like, "But you like Star Wars?" I said, "Because Star Wars doesn't make sense because it's not supposed to make sense because it's not real." And I ruin moments because it's like I'm in a movie. I'm like, this doesn't make that's stupid, you know. And I'm doing these things, and I'm ruining the experience because I don't want to be there. So now I'm agitated, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. That's illogical. Da da da. And no, the rain doesn't fall that way. This is bad. You know, and I start doing that. The technical side kicks in, and it's like,
let's just go home. Let's just go.
But it works in my favor sometimes, and then they never want to do it with me again.
Oh.
So it works out. So sometimes it works, and I don't have to ever want, you know. But for me, it's very like I want to see a rom-com, and I'm like, well, you gotta go see your friends. You gotta go with your friends to this. Yeah, I can't do it with you. I went and saw what was that black movie? The Best Man, the last one made, right? My ex-wife, she wanted to see that. It was one of her favorite movies. And I was like, I kept warning. I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I can't do this with you. But because you're in a relationship, but I'm also like, I can't keep taking, even though I give in other places. This was important to her. I got to tough it out. And I just remember I sit in the movie theater and I was like, this is hell. If there was hell on earth, this is hell for me right now. Because it was just so like that's how my stuff presents history. Like people be like trains. It wasn't trains for me, it was planes. Because I grew up nearby JFK.
Yeah.
So like when I was growing up, I remember seeing all the planes. I love planes, but I like technical stuff. Yeah. I like trains too when I'm on them and when I'm in the moment, I pay attention to it. But it's not like I'm like so history. That's why I did so well with law. Programming is why I like programming. That's because I could I would literally, like I said, I coded for 3 days straight. When I say I coded for 3 days straight, I watched all 5 seasons of Game of Thrones straight.
Oh my gosh.
My mom would get up, go to bed, go to work in the morning. I'm sitting in front of the computer in the dining room. She'd come home from work. I'm still in the same spot. I would just stop to get something to eat and go to the bathroom. That was it. And just to do that, I had to get to a point where I was like, I can't hold this anymore. So that's how some things present. And it's not, and now knowing what I know, I try to let people know, like, I can't do that. And I don't want to ruin the moment for you.
Right.
Because I'm going to ruin the moment for you. Because it's gonna be present. I can't, you're gonna know I'm uncomfortable. Sometimes realize that